got to start asking some questions about whether or not this is being well managed. I mean, just on March 3rd, a budget was tabled that said it would be about $180 million for all the security and associated costs for the G8, G20. But then 9 weeks later, we find it's gone up by 5 times and seems to have no end in sight. The more questions we ask, the more money it seems to cost. And of course now it's reached a point where it's far more expensive than previous summits have been. The City of London, post 9/11 and post an attack on their own subway system, managed to put on one of these summits for $30 or $40 million. We're spending 30 times that. It doesn't look like they planned it very well or thought it through particularly well. They were going to try and shoehorn them into Huntsville. Then they realized there wasn't enough space. So then they moved it into downtown Toronto and kicked the Blue Jays out. And then they suddenly had to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars of more money and give everybody who lives in downtown an identity card just to go home. I mean, it sounds to me like they're inventing this as they go, and that's not good. They're even refusing to compensate merchants who might get their stores smashed by some of the hooligans that get involved. That doesn't seem right to me. Why should a small business person who's working hard to make the community a better place and sell a product or be creative and innovative in our downtown, why should they have to absorb the cost? The question is, will it turn out at the end of the day to have been worth it for the kinds of costs that are involved? Let's remember that once we start talking about $1 billion for Toronto might perhaps have been better spent on an LRT line to some of the communities that need transit service. One thinks of Jane Finch and Rexdale. It takes forever to travel from those very low-income communities to anywhere else in the city. We could have left a lasting impact that would have had benefits for generations if we'd made that kind of investment, but the Conservatives have been very reluctant to support Toronto in its public transit plan, which after all is important for climate change, but then again Mr. Harper doesn't believe in it. He doesn't want it even raised at the G8 and G20. I think he's wrong there. So it's a question of priorities. It looks like lots of police and security and that sort of thing. That gets pretty much a blank check from Mr. Harper. But things like public transit, no.